Great Westminster here. It's constant. You know me. We talk Nikon on this channel. You got Bruno Murari from Nikon UK, who came in with this little camera and this kit lens. It's a kit lens. It's called 58 0.95. You can buy it with Z50 Mark II today. It's only costs what, $999 or is it $9999?
Yeah.
All right. Well,
nice kit lens.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us today. You've been obviously demonstrating Z50 to the customers who came into the shop. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Right. So essentially, I split my time half as a photographer and DP. You know, I shoot a lot of projects for myself, a lot of music, commercials, documentaries, that kind of thing. But also half of my time is spent with Nikon UK as a training and event specialist.
Fantastic. So you do a bit of videography. We're going to ask you some video questions. But thank you, everyone in the chat who joined us today. Hello, John, Frank, John Rayleigh as well, Raimo, David Moscoro, Argante, all the high angler, Tadeusz, Andy, got your photography challenge subscription. Photography challenge, not subscription, competition has started again, and it's a night photography challenge. So if you would like to participate, we've done it before, we stopped it for 6 months, so it's happening again. Send me some of your night shots. Could be anything, could be cityscapes, landscapes, portraiture, you name it. Whatever is shot in the dark, with a flash or without flash, send it to media@gracewestminster.co.uk, and we will showcase the best works on a live stream in a few weeks' time. So definitely there is plenty of time, but please don't send me 20 years ago shots. Send me stuff that you've done now, because the whole point of those challenges is actually to get out and take some pictures, you know, not just talk about megapixels and things, but actually do some photography. If you have any technical questions for Bruno, put QQQ at the front, hopefully mostly on Z50, but since we have a Nikon representative here, you can ask him anything. When Z9 Mark II comes out, we were going to see Z8 Mark V. All this, he will say, whatever, you know, keep asking them. He won't answer them, let's be honest. But whatever question you may have, definitely please ask them in the comments and live chat. If you have never been in the live chat, please, please, please join. There's lovely people in the chat. You can simply do this. Last thing, Nikon Black Friday started now, today. So there's additional discounts. I think this Z8 discount now goes up to about £570. It was 300 before today, so it's 570. This Z6 Mark III, ZF, bunch of lenses as well. So have a look at our website. It's all in there. There's no point of waiting for Black Friday. All retailers, yeah, it's like, it used to be 1 day, right? Then it became 4 days. Then it became a week. This week it starts in 2 weeks in advance.
Yeah, I think it's a lot better when you do it for a longer period of time. That way, everyone's not rushing in on the same day.
Do you think we've just kind of trained our kind of customer behavior just to wait for the last day and spend all the money? Yeah.
So.
But now you don't have to do this. You have plenty of time to place your orders. On that note, Koffee Fund is open. I'm going to ask you questions. So tell me a little bit more about Z50 Mark II camera. What are the differences? What do you think is the best feature of this camera?
I think it just comes down to the X-Speed 7 processor that we've got on the Z50. I mean, the Z50 Mark II essentially is a Z50 with an added-in flippy screen that comes out. I don't know if you guys can see it here, but it's a flippy out screen, just like the Z6 Mark III, the ZF. So that's a little bit different. That's one thing you notice straight away that is quite different from the Z50 Mark I.
This is Mark I version.
But it's also a little bit thicker, and that's to do with the new processor that we've got in there. And I think that will be the biggest difference, because from that processor, there's so much more that we can extract from the camera. You know, we've got the same type of subject detection modes that you find on the Z8 and Z9. In fact, the identical in terms of how they operate, you know, with 3D tracking and all the different subject detection options.
All right, so we've got this body. You told me that basically price is exactly the same as was Z50 Mark I at the time. Yeah. So no inflation increase.
No inflation increase. It's exactly the same price, but you get a lot more.
Yeah, so a lot of people say in terms of just like price value for the package, I think you get a lot of things, because you obviously have the Gen 3 technology trickling down from Z9 straight down to Z50. Obviously, it took them a few years to get there, but I think the value, just kind of per pound spent, is absolutely amazing. You do video. Is there any video features that's interesting?
Oh, yeah, there's quite a lot. I mean, the screen is one factor. I mean, me personally, I'm probably the 1% of people that shoot video that actually don't like the screen. Me personally, I'm more of the Z8, Z9 kind of screen because it comes out a little bit closer. But if you are filming yourself, I mean, for this type of podcast, I think that would work wonderfully. Having the screen that rotates to the side and where we can see ourselves is really useful. I'm a big fan of this, which is a tally light. So essentially, when you're recording, in fact, I'll do it now so you can see. No memory card.
No memory card. Here we go. Let's see if there's a memory card on this one. That's a good question.
Good question. Yeah.
Yes.
We swapped it earlier.
It's a beautiful 10 years old SD card, so it will record all the 4K footage at the 1 frame per second.
When you are recording video, you get this beautiful red light on there, which means the camera can be on a tripod and you know for sure that it's recording. You know, you're never going to have that issue where you think you press the button and then you go to find the footage and oops, where is it?
You think it's not that important, but trust me, as a person who published quite a few videos on YouTube, I've done it. You know, luckily haven't gone home with no footage at all. But you know, every now and then you record the podcast, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You record the Z50 launch. Yeah. You press record on the camera, you forgot to press the record on the actual audio thing.
Painful.
So that's what happened to me and Becky on the last Nikon report, because we haven't done it before, you know, so for a very long time. So we got a bit rusty, but...
Yeah, so it's really important to have that.
Absolutely.
It may seem like a small thing, but
visual feedback, isn't it?
Massive. You also get, coming from the new processor, you also get 10-bit N-Log video internally, which is huge. It's the first time we've ever done this on Nikon DX.
Explain us, for us stills photographers, you know, who never shot videos, why is it important to have 10-bit log?
Think of it like that. So with stills cameras, you've got JPEG and you've got RAW. If you were to have RAW video, which some of our cameras do offer, you would have to get much bigger cards. You know, we're talking about a terabyte's worth of footage. We're talking about 500 gigabytes just to record a simple video. So raw video is not always convenient because the file size is so much bigger than it is for photography. So what we do instead is we have log video, which essentially is a hybrid between what in stills would be a JPEG and a RAW. So essentially what it is a really flat picture profile with better colors than your standard 8-bit video. And that allows you for greater dynamic range and more flexibility in editing without the file sizes from RAW. So it's a nice in between and it gives you great video quality without having to get massive cards. So basically when it comes down to grading, you got a little bit more flexibility. So it's not exactly JPEG versus RAW, but it's like JPEG versus what? Like a very good JPEG? I don't know. I mean, the 10-bit HEIF files would be a similar comparison. Maybe if you had a flat version of those and you could add the color back in. So for example, with video, when you record in log, it's a really flat picture, which is great because you get more details in your shadows and highlights, but you've got to bring the color back. And I think that's where it's a nice segue onto the partnership that we've got with Red. So recently we've also published a series of LUTs, so they're called lookup tables, where you can essentially bring that color back in a preset. To put it simply. So that's available there? That's available there. So any camera within log is compatible with the latest Red LUTs. There's several of them, and they all come directly from the Red cinema cameras, and you can now use them on any Nikon camera that's compatible with N-Log. So Z6 III, Z9, Z8, Z50 Mark II. You were saying the feedback was quite positive. Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Because the thing is, Red is a cinema camera company, so they know how to extract the best in terms of color science from video cameras specifically. So bringing their expertise to Nikon cameras, I think, is really useful, and the color that you can come out of these is absolutely fantastic. All right, we're not going to bother you too much about video. Don't worry, don't leave the chat yet. Ask me the questions, but it's good to have a video person here because we don't really get that, and that's why even like. I like shoot video every now and then, but there's certain things that become a little bit overcomplicated, like all those false color things, and that can get complicated. So if you have any questions like this, definitely please ask. But before we move on to Steele's questions, so this Nikki P 000 is asking, is it 422 in video? Is it 420? I believe it's 420. All right. Okay, here we go. So that's enough video for now. Let's move on to some Steele's questions. So there's first question from Dave Walker. No, sorry, Dave, wasn't you. It was Darko, and he says Z50 Mark II bird eye of how good is it? So I guess that's the bird AF tracking. That's the first question. And then with FTZ adapters to something like 200 to 500 lens or any long telephoto AF mount lens, how front heavy it is? I mean, quite a lot, because if you're talking about 200 to 500, the lens is there, then you've got the FTZ, and then the camera, which is quite small and compact. So to put it simply, it will be fairly front heavy. F-mount lenses, generally speaking, are slightly more front heavy than Z-mount ones. If you are concerned about that specifically, I would recommend looking at some of the Z-mount lenses, simply because I'll give you an example. The 100 to 400, as you zoom the lens out, the back element actually comes back inside the lens, so the weight is always at the back. So with that lens on the Z50 Mark II, it would feel perfectly balanced. But with an FTZ and the 200 to 500, you may feel that it will be quite a bit front heavy.
Yes, and this is my first time where I actually see the camera in the flash. And what I can tell you, I mean, if you compare side by side, if you're just going to remove this little pancake lens for 58, but if you, let's say, if you're going to put, which one is the right camera? Okay, no, here we go.
27, yeah.
So this is 16 to 50 lens, right? So first of all, what you're going to see is, how do you put the lens on? There's a white dot on the lens. There's a white dot on the camera. You line them up, and then you twist it anti-clockwise. So just reminding myself really more than anything else. But what I can tell you, the grip is deeper. You know, it doesn't actually look significantly bigger. So it's quite close. So, you know, if you look at it, but the grip is better. So generally for handling, for shooting handheld with long lenses, it's definitely a slightly better balance compared to Mark I version. But obviously, if you're shooting with long lenses for whole day, you're probably going to mount it on a tripod, and the big lens will have a tripod foot. That's what you're going to attach it to the tripod, not actually the base of the lens. So, you know, so overall, yes, again, I guess it comes down to, you know, a lot of people are thinking about, let's say, will it replace a D500, you know, so because you get a frame rate, you get fast focus, but obviously the body is much smaller, so
which can be a good thing. I mean, if you're looking for a D500 replacement that's significantly more compact, well, that's what we've got the Z50 Mark II. From a performance standpoint, absolutely can replace the D500, but it is a different size, it is a different shape, so it's something to get used to.
Absolutely. We're going to say thank you to Gary Morrison, who says, enjoy your coffee. Thank you very much. And we're going to say thank you to Jay Blue, who says, happy Friday. I have some coffee. Coffee is spelled with K.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Like, just like Mortal Kombat or Constantine, spelled with K. So just a little thing we have on this channel. But I'm going to ask you some tough questions. So some of the questions have been asked last time, and I'm going to go through the chat as well. But someone asked me about the readout of the sensor. Is it different from Z50 Mark II? And then the blackout. So when you shoot in high frame rate. So if you could answer those two questions for me, please.
Yeah, so the sensor itself is the same from the Z50. So there's no change to the sensor itself.
It's not a new sensor. It's
not a new sensor.
Hopefully that's been buried.
Yeah.
The reason why we say this is because when we did the podcast, we said it's a new sensor.
Yeah.
Because the way we were presented it, you know, implied there was a new sensor. It's not. So that's the thing. So hopefully
there's a lot more to it. I mean, even though the sensor itself is the same, everything surrounding it is different. So the processor, the XP7, can get a lot more out of that sensor.
There's more points as well on this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so there's like a low pass filter. It does have one. Well, Mark I doesn't have one. So I guess that. Okay, tell me about blackout. Is it different from Z50?
Yeah, so yes and no. So when you're a mechanical shutter, the blackout will be very similar to what you find from a Z50 Mark I. The autofocus is going to be completely revamped and changed, but the blackout will be very similar. When you are using electronic shutter mode at the higher end, so say for example if you're shooting at 30 frames a second, then you get very similar to a no blackout experience. I don't want to say it's completely blackout free, because it doesn't have the same kind of technology that the Z9 and the Z8 do in terms of dual stream. But the experience of using it is as close to blackout free as you can physically get without being blackout free. You know, when you're shooting with it, you won't see any blackout, but essentially what the camera is doing is that it's showing you the shots in real time. So it's not completely blackout free because it doesn't have the technology, but in real terms, you won't really notice it if you are using the electronic shutter at 15 and 30 frames a second. If you're using 11 frames a second, then you might notice a little blackout, but it's very, very small.
Yeah, now let's keep in mind this is 850 pounds camera. So there's a lot of question when they come like this, they you know, there is a reason why you have to fit within a certain price bracket. And if you compare it to what other brands do, it's a very competitive package. Again, is there no IBIS on the sensor? Is that, do you think it's a cost-cutting measure? Because obviously, I can imagine it costs a lot to design one. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, absolutely. We know the Z mount is capable of IBIS, so it's something that definitely could have been done. But the question is how do you fit that camera into that £800 price point? Keep in mind the Z50 Mark II is coming in at exactly the same price as the Z50 Mark I 5 years later. So not even accounting for inflation. So it's definitely something to bear in mind. And there are some considerations to be made. The XP7 processor is a very advanced processor, probably not that cheap to produce. So there are choices that have to be made when you're developing a camera. So it comes down to price and target market, and comes down to the features that are going to be most important for most users. The biggest bit of feedback that we had on the Z50 Mark I was autofocus. So I think that was a priority for the designers of the camera, is get the autofocus to a point where it could be not only extremely competitive, but surpass people's expectations. And I think that's what they've successfully done with the XP7.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to put the XP7 and IBIS into a body this price is tough. And I assume that's why they chose not to do it. And if you look at competitor cameras at the same price point, you'll find that they don't have IBIS either.
I'm with you. So obviously that leads me to the question that you can't answer, but do you think there is a place for professional DX camera which would replace camera like D500?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always the potential there for every single camera to be made. They continuously look at the needs of customers, and I think if there's enough people that want it, they'll definitely take that into consideration, and who knows, maybe there might be one in the future. Obviously
there's two different angles from there. Some people say, well, no, I need that camera, and then some people say, well, Z5 for that money gives me better image quality. So, where's the sort? Like, obviously, it seems like Nikon starting with full-frame cameras. I think Nikon wants us to buy a full-frame camera to start with. But, a lot of people say, well, why don't you buy Z8 and shoot in DX crop mode? But obviously, it's a different price bracket, if you see what I mean. So if, let's say, camera like D500 comes out with all that spec, what do you think? What the price would be? Would it be within, let's say, $2,000 or $2.5 price range or something like this?
Something to keep in mind as well for everyone is D500 came out at $1,799, I think, price point.
That was when 2016.
2016.
Yeah.
So when you're comparing it to a Z50 Mark II, there is quite a big difference, and you are getting a lot of bang for your buck in terms of value.
Yeah, there's this thing called inflation as well, and in recent years has jumped as well. Yeah.
Once you start to get to the point where you're looking at, £2,000, 2,000 plus, then you're getting very close to Z7 Mark II, Z6 Mark III. Z8, exactly. So for the people that do have D500s and they want to upgrade, at that price point, if you take account for inflation, you would just buy a Z8, realistically speaking. And if you want something below that price point, then we offer a lot of the same features that you get on the Z8 on the Z50 Mark II.
But you also don't deny that we may see something in the future.
Potentially. If there's enough demand, I'm sure, Nikon is consistently monitoring the market. If there's significant demand for a specific camera, I'm sure that they'll take that into consideration.
Fantastic. Let's look at your comments and your questions. So Raimo says that he tried Z50 Mark II yesterday and it's super good. Fantastic. Glad you enjoyed it. I've, again, just comment on your previous notes. You said that, autofocus, the improved autofocus. I tried it for the first time today. Autofocus is, miles ahead, I would say.
It's not even close.
Definitely. It's one of those things where now I'm really happy that Gen 3 cameras is where the autofocus is so good, then we're going to see Gen 4 at some point, maybe 3-4 years down the road. But autofocus is so fast nowadays. Yes, it's going to be faster. Will it make a lot of difference? No, but I think this is Gen 3 cameras are the first cameras where we can say, yes, there's this big jump in terms of even, between Gen 2 and Gen 3 cameras in terms of autofocus.
Absolutely.
All right, more questions. So Tyler Smith says, does Z5 Mark II has focus shift shooting?
Yes.
Fantastic. It's built in, accessible through the menu.
There's a lot of things from the Z8, Z9, Z6 III that have been put into the Z50 Mark II that weren't present on the Z50.
Fantastic. Tadeusz is asking, saying maybe a silly question, but can you mount DX lenses on that model? Yes, you got FTZ adapter, so any F-mount lens will go on that body. Obviously, if it's AFS type, it will autofocus. If it's not AFS type, it will be manual focus only. So it also allows you to obviously mount anything, even pre-eye lenses on FTZ with no issues whatsoever. So
you can also get AFP lenses in autofocus as well.
That's true. That's right. And the beauty of the Z mount overall is you can buy all sorts of mount adapters. You want Mamiya 7, there's one exists. That's the thing. You want Pentax 6.7. I mean, it would look probably a bit ridiculous on a body like this, but definitely the possibilities are there. Obviously, it's a manual focus, but there's even now Leica M adapter, which will allow you autofocus from Chinese manufacturers. So there's definitely there. So Chris is asking, would Z50 Mark II be a good first camera for 5-year-old to learn photography skills? If not, do you have any recommendations? My biggest concerns are the weight, durability, and work with the small hands. 5 years old is getting Z50 Mark II.
Absolutely.
The world moved on. I used to have wooden toys when I grew up. I think a Game & Watch is the most expensive thing I got when I was a kid.
5, yeah.
But it's incredible. From personal experience, I think, like even Z50 is a good option to start because A, it's cheaper, and overall, I think they're not significantly different. I think is it the same weight or is it?
No, it's about 100 grams heavier.
100 grams heavier. So probably Z50 probably going to be, you don't really need to get the latest tech from 5-year-old, but who knows?
Yeah.
There
is something which I think could be quite useful if you're starting out that young with photography, which is actually the picture control button right on top. So it's really easy, really accessible, much easier than the Z50 Mark I, where essentially, I don't know if you guys can see, but there's a button on top, very big, very clear. You can just press that button and it engages the picture control layout. And then you can use the dial to just choose all of your picture controls. And there's a lot of options here.
Do you have a Portra 400?
No, not yet.
But it's available on Nikon Cloud, though. That's the thing. I think, because Nikon Cloud is included with this camera, so you can actually download customer user design picture controls.
Yes.
So if you want your film simulations, that's one to approach. But you're right. Even let's say younger generation, not just 5 years old, but
super easy.
Because we're coming from kind of younger generation, they're phone generation, so they. We used to have phones with buttons. They don't know what the thing is, but it's so easy to apply profile in places like Instagram and all sorts of, picture sharing websites and apps. So overall, I think the easier we can do for them to get that look in camera without aiding the post-processing software, I think is quite useful.
And some people just don't want to edit. I mean, if you're starting out, you may not know how to edit. So it's important to be able to use the camera straight away in an easy manner. Without having to edit the pictures to get the look you want. Mm-hmm.
There's a question from Andy about the firmware, and he's asking, it's not exactly related to Z50 Mark II, but he's asking, is it possible that tally lights could be added to Z8, Z9, and Z6 III camera via firmware update using the white modeling light? It's very specific.
Potentially. Historically, the tally lamps are red for video recording. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how well that would work in the field because you could mistake it for a different type of light. Mm-hmm. Whether it can be done or not, we'll see in time. Again, if there's enough feedback, enough people wanting that feature, then I'm sure they'll look at it. They've got a priority of things that they're currently working on. Mm-hmm. Whether that's on that list, time will tell.
Eric Laurie is asking where he can get that sweatshirt with the Nikon logo. Very important question.
That's important. Well,
does Nikon store sell some merch?
I don't think we sell any merch. Unfortunately,
you gotta be
I guess you just have to come see me in person, and I might give it to you
for a good price.
We'll talk after.
All right. And Chris agreed. The shirt is legit. He says. I think I've got one of those.
Yeah.
I've got one of those as well. I know people.
Yeah.
All right. So Roj Bunny is asking, can the Z50 Mark II be set for synchronized release like the other XP7 cameras?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of things that historically wouldn't be in that price point that they've just ported over from the Z8, Z9, Z6 Mark III. And it has the synchronized release option, has the focus shift, it even has FTP. So it's definitely a really, really powerful camera.
You mean FTP, the upload server?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. You can upload to FTP from that?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
So CyberZen was asking the question about picture profile button. We answered that, so that's good. Let's see. Okay. So Tajer says J Blue question was more about if any of the old lenses are worth keeping for this model. He refers to F-mount lenses that we covered. Do you use F-mount lenses on cameras?
I've recently gone away from them. So I sold all the remaining F-mount lenses that I've had, so I've gone fully Z. But absolutely, I mean, the F-mount lenses I still keep are the film lenses because I think they look fantastic. We were speaking earlier about the 55 1.2. So I think there are certain lenses that are absolutely worth keeping. But there's other lenses where you'd be better off with a Z equivalent. It's kind of a personal question, and it varies from person to person. I'd say I would avoid keeping any of the kit lenses that would have come with DSLRs, just because I'll give you an example. The kit lens that comes with the Z50 Mark II is absolutely tiny. That would be the same size as the FTZ, and then you'd have the old 18-55 on top of it, which would make the camera from this size, that size. So I would probably avoid keeping any of the kit lenses. But if you have really good glass, I mean, the FTZ is there for a reason. We've designed it to work really well with all AFS lenses. So if you've got special lenses, then absolutely. If you have a 35 1.4 or something like that, that's really nice, then it would work perfectly. So as long as you're happy with your lens, keep it.
That's right. And keep in mind, this is DX camera, so the sensor is smaller. It's not full frame. It's 1.5 times smaller, which means whatever lens you put on it, you get 1.5 crop. So 50 becomes 75 equivalent, more or less, you know. So that means, actually, there's two things. Yeah, you get a longer focal distances. So for wide angle lenses, you will lose that wide angle. Second of all, you basically shooting through the sensor of the lens, which is the sharpest part of the lens. So a lot of all the lenses on that sensor will perform really well, but as long as you don't mind 1.5 crop. Now, here's a question from Deborah, which is related to this. She's saying, can you talk about manual focus assist on this camera? Is it similar to ZF?
Identical, yes. So you get the manual assist with eye tracking, which is really, really nice.
Fantastic.
When you're using older lenses, the camera will still pick up the eyes, so that when you press the magnification button, it will always go directly on the eye. Doesn't matter where the subject is. So the person could be moving about, and every time you press that magnification button, it will jump to their eye, and then you can use the focus peaking, where it highlights the areas in focus of your frame in a color that you choose. It could be red, it could be green, and then as you're manually focusing, it highlights on there. So those two things together, especially for portraits, are really, really powerful tools for manual focus.
Fantastic. So if you use a ZF, that's, it's going to be quite useful. I use it quite a lot because I use a lot of third-party manual focus lenses on my ZF, and definitely having the eye recognition where you can just quickly press OK to see if the basically eyeball is sharp. It's very, very useful. We're going to thank Tim Herring, who says have a good weekend and some coffee. Thank you very much, Tim. We appreciate it. We're going to say thank you to Randall, who says Nikon Z50 Mark II has a backside illumination BSI CMOS sensor, 20.9 megapixel BSI CMOS XP 7, 30 frames per second JPEG in 11 frames per second in RAW. Plus, it has a flash. Enjoy your coffee. Camera that has a flash, it's a rarity nowadays, isn't it? Remember good old days where every camera has a flash.
Even the professional cameras.
That's right. I think D700 had flash. I mean, D800. No, D800 didn't. I think maybe I'm wrong. No, I think D800 did, but D700 had. No. I could be wrong.
50. I think the D810 had flash. Pretty sure.
Could be D50 then D8.
Because I think the D850 was the first D8 series to remove.
Oh right. And I mean, those things are useful. I remember I used to trigger flash guns, other flash guns. So that's the CLS and even studio flash guns work really well. So that's quite cool. David Moscori is asking a question which is not related to this, but this is some sort of issue that he has with ZF, and I don't know if you heard of this, but he says, occasionally when I turn on my ZF, the screen is dark, then slowly lights up. Also, my focus point will be on the right side of the screen, and I physically have to move it. Any updates that will fix it?
I'm not sure on that specific. I mean, there has been a firmware update for the ZF very recently. As far as I know, it doesn't fix that specifically. I'd probably need a bit more information to figure out what's happening, because the screen dark at the beginning, I'm not sure if that's a hardware issue or if it's a software issue. So we'll probably have to look into that a little bit more. I
would recommend factory reset of the camera just to see if there's anything affecting it. Another thing, I think when you're referring to the focusing point right in the somewhere in the corner, switch off your touch screen, because maybe it's your nose pressing it. Or accidentally,
it happens all the time.
That's the thing. I mean, one feature that kind of I want is the log button, because I have one of my buttons, I think it's OK, or one of those, basically set to reset the focusing points to the middle. So that's what I normally do. But good old-fashioned lock, that would be absolutely amazing.
Around here, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the thing. We didn't see that on Z cameras for some reason, but obviously it was a very common feature on cameras like D800, etc. So, but if something comes up, David, I'll be able to let you know. Let's look at more of your questions. Eric Laurie says, why is a D850 still ranked up top on DxO Mark above all Z cameras?
I'd probably say it depends on how you phrase that question. So I'll answer it in two parts. So if it's a review So it could be just personal preference of whoever reviewed it, that they just gave it a really high score. If you're talking about sensor performance, which is, I'm guessing, where you're going with this question, one thing to keep in mind is that every stacked sensor camera on the market, not just Nikon, global shutter or stacked sensor cameras, they often come with very small penalties to dynamic range. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. The difference is very, very small. We're talking about, you have to get in the studio to measure it, and we're talking about decimal points. But the difference is there. So when it comes to sensor performance, the D850 will be 0.00.1% better than a Z8 or a Z9. Because there is that very small penalty in terms of dynamic range when you add the stacking, because you're essentially adding circuitry to a sensor, which adds heat, which heat is not a great thing for image quality.
True. Yeah, I mean, realistically speaking,
you won't see a difference.
Yeah, you won't see the difference.
Nobody will ever see a difference when you're just editing the photos yourself. You'd probably have to test it in a lab.
That was this whole thing about dynamic range of Z6 III, where people made out to be bigger than it is, and I'm glad that it's kind of past everyone, and people just,
because it's such a small difference.
That's the thing. Yeah. That's the thing. Coming back to Z50 Mark II, there was the question of weatherproofing from John Hughes. How weatherproof it is? Is it better than Z50 Mark I?
No, it's about the same.
It's about the same.
So very light drizzle. I wouldn't leave it out in the rain all day, but if you get caught in the rain as you're walking about, it's not going to be a major problem. Most Z lenses are weather sealed anyway, so a good way to tell is if your mount has metal mount, it's weather sealed. So, which are pretty much almost all Z lenses are like that, bar 5.
I'm with you. Okay, with this at this point, there's random questions coming. So it's just from all angles. So we're going to be back to that Z50 Mark II. Again, Andy Miller is asking a very specific question. Video relays and the XLR port related. So can you conceive that Nikon would consider adopting a data hot shoe like Fuji/Canon used to allow high quality recordings to be made external devices like XLR 2D recorded as a part of the video?
Yeah, so there's two things to that question. I mean, there's different ways that you can achieve the same end result. So with some of the other competitors, they have done it through the hot shoe, and that's something that we can consider as well. I mean, Nikon is looking at the market very closely, especially video. So if there's something that a lot of people request, it will probably get done at some point. Nikon has been very good at listening to consumer feedback. But at the same time, the other way to do it is to actually add line-in audio to our cameras, which we've done with the Z6 Mark III. So essentially what line-in allows you to do is to bypass the camera's internal recording and to just use an XLR recorder to do that. So we actually already do that in one of our cameras, which is a Z6 Mark III, but instead of doing it through the hot shoe, we do it through the microphone jack. So what you do is you take a recorder, audio recorder, plug the XLR into that, and then just line out from the recorder into the line in of the Z6 Mark III. Make sure that you set that as an option in the menu, and then that will bypass the camera's internal audio recording and get you much higher quality.
So basically, before you would record your video on a camera with some bad quality audio, and then you have external device with a proper XLR mic to record that audio within that device, and then you would basically sync the audio tracks from the camera to the proper audio quality in the post. So that allows just record it straight into the camera, so that way you don't need to do synchronization anymore.
Exactly. So just two ways of doing the same thing. Some people do it through the hot shoe. We do it through the microphone input.
That's quite cool. David Mascoro wants a rangefinder. How likely are we going to get Nikon Z rangefinder?
I would love one as well.
David, there's three of us with the money in the bank, ready to go. So come on, Nikon, let's do this. Kirill Grushko is in the chat. Hello, Kirill. He says, is there hope for ZFC based on Z50 Mark II platform?
I mean, if there were to be a ZFC Mark II, it would obviously be updated with everything that we're bringing out into the Nikon ecosystem. So essentially if new cameras come out, then they'll of course have the new technologies integrated into them.
I mean, it's not that outlandish that ZFC Mark II will come out with all the updates. I think it's a matter of time. I think something like Rangefinder is a little bit, probably not on the priority list for Nikon to do, but definitely there's three of us. That's it. So
when are you ready to go?
And we are growing. It was two of us, David. Now it's three of us. So that's very important. So let's see more questions. So yeah, Jay Broad Photo Art still thinks that we need D500 replacements. As we said, we didn't rule out it. So the jury is out there. I feel like we were talking about D500 replacement for the last 3 years. So that's the thing. So it's a sore point for everyone. But I think, yeah, if you're going to see that, who knows? I mean, this next year, what do you think? Where do you think Nikon is heading next year? What, let's say, cameras do you think are likely to be upgraded? Like, let's say, not next year, but sometime in the close future to us. What do you think? I mean, obviously you don't know anything. He's just Nikon employee. He will tell me after. But where do you think? Where's the next camera going to come from? Is it going to be Z9 Mark II, or are we going to see Z5 Mark II? Because a lot of people in the chat are asking about Z5 Mark II as well.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to that, obviously Nikon doesn't comment publicly on future upcoming releases, but usually Nikon tries to keep a very specific release cycle. So, if you look at the Z50, that was the oldest camera in our lineup, and we have just recently upgraded it. So
micro USB port. I mean, that's all you need to know.
Exactly. So it doesn't take too much to figure out when Nikon's going to release new cameras. We do try to keep a fairly regular schedule, but as I said, Nikon doesn't comment publicly on cameras that haven't been released yet.
Fantastic. And Dinaya is saying, I'm late for the show. No problem. No one is late on the show, even me. But he is asking, what is the release date of the camera? I know. You know?
Yeah. We start shipping on the 21st.
That's right. So first cameras will be delivered on 21st. If you pre-order the camera, we will be in touch with you, calling saying that your camera arrived. As with everything in the UK, it all comes from European Union. So as long as the borders are free and they're nice people checking the Nikon parcels, then we should be getting on day one. So that's the thing. But it's literally next Thursday, which is really, really cool. You can still pre-order those. As a Great Westminster, we give free battery charger. They don't come with battery chargers anymore. That's a very important thing because Nikon tells you to use USB-C port on this camera, not that one. That's micro USB. But but if you want a traditional cradle charger, then if you pre-order, you get one with your pre-order at Great Westminster, and there's a 128 gig memory card as well. So my suggestion, the only thing you'll need is a spare battery. How's the battery life on this camera?
Fantastic. I'd say it's about 20% better than the previous generation because we've updated the battery as well from the ENEL 25 to the ENEL 25A.
Okay, so it's
a little bit more power.
Okay, that's really cool. Is there like a new, more efficient way of using energy as well?
Yeah, but also it's slightly higher capacity as well. So both is more efficient and higher capacity, which is really good.
All right, so my microphone is a bit too high. I'm sorry about that. Let's see. Hopefully it's better a little bit. I don't really can't monitor myself. Otherwise, I would be with headphones and we would pretend like we are podcasters, which we are not. So let's be honest, we're not that professional. But Kalayan is asking, can I use Z50 Mark II with my Z800mm and 600mm point f6.3 lenses? We would not be too front heavy. I think we kind of answered that. But
but I actually think with Z mount lenses, it works really well because the thing with F mount lenses is that you're putting the weight beyond the adapter, but if you're using it natively with Z mount lenses, especially the 600-6.3, I think due to the deeper grip of the Z50 Mark II, I think it would actually be fairly comfortable. I have used that setup before.
Because effectively you got 1 point of stress with the native lenses.
Yeah.
While with FTZ you have 2 points of stress. So you got the mount to FTZ and then FTZ mount to mount of the lens. So that's the thing. But to answer your question, as we covered before, look, if you mount it on a tripod, then you're going to use tripod foot that is on the lens already because all those lenses have this. Technically, camera has a slightly deeper grip, so overall it should be a little bit better than compared to Z50 Mark I. G500, who knows, maybe it will come at some point. That's you see, like there's people asking about this. It's just there's no way, So obviously, when you see President of Nikon, when you get back from here, you just tell him, and he'll just
of course we'll
green light everything. Yeah, there's literally 3 people work at Nikon, so it's President of Nikon, so Bruno and Richie. So that's all. So let's see more questions. So Eric from Sweden, hello. He's asking, will there be Z versions of the PC Micro Nikons? The 45mm is very creative for close landscapes, and it works with FTZ Mark II. PC lenses.
Eventually, there will be I get a lot of questions asking about fisheyes, about PCs and things like that. Eventually, the whole range will be available in Z mount. That's a given. When that will be, what those lenses are, and more details, we'll have to wait and see as soon as they're released. But of course, Nikon's aim is to replace the entire F system with Z. So if there's something that isn't available on Z but is on F, I'm sure that will come to Z mount at some point.
All right. So since we're talking lenses, Z35 1.2,
Yeah.
I've heard of that lens for a few years. Any news on that? Any updates?
No. Unfortunately, it's one of those things. It was there was a 35mm on the roadmap, and that hasn't been released as of yet. Whether that is something that still will be released or not, we'll have to wait and see, as Nikon no longer provides any roadmaps. But if it was once in the roadmap, I'd be fairly confident.
Yeah, I think if you have any wild theories why, definitely write them down in the comments. We're going to read them out. So we're going to put tinfoil hat and everything. But obviously they released 3514. It's not a replacement of 3512, clearly. There's also 51.4 out. Do you think we'll see 85 1.4?
Possibly.
Makes sense?
If there's enough demand from customers, then I'm sure that will be something that Nikon will release. I mean, the response that we've had to the 50 and the 35 have been amazing. So I definitely think there's more room there.
What about ultra wide angle prime?
Yeah.
There's plenty of wide angle zooms. Mm-hmm. What about something like a short and stubby 14mm? Is it something we will see?
I mean, I'm sure if it was available in the F mount, then we can expect that at some point there will be similar lenses coming out for Z.
All right. There's a question about what is the difference between FTZ and FTZ Mark II?
Really, it's just the foot.
Tripod
so
foot?
it's the tripod foot at the bottom. So obviously it's a very different thing, but you see that's got the tripod foot there. The FTZ Mark I has one, and the FTZ Mark II hasn't. Other than that, they're identical.
Have you been to Nikon Museum in Japan?
No. It's something that I really, really want to go one day. I think a few of my colleagues that are based in the UK are actually there now. So
they've just built a new HQ, right?
Yeah, it looks amazing. Fantastic.
They have this sinkhole covers that look like FTZ cups. How cool is that? I want to go
Fantastic. There. Yeah, me too. You and me both.
But in the meantime, I think Matt Irvin went there recently. So yeah, definitely have a look at his videos. So let's look at more of your questions. And while I'm doing this, I'm just going to... So we've covered the lenses. Yeah, I can ask you what's coming next from Nikon. I mean... obviously but you can't tell us. So we've covered that question.
I can answer one thing. I mean,
yes,
we've pre-announced the 28-135, so I think that's something that will be coming out.
Is that a part of? Do you think there will be more lenses?
Of course. No, I mean, Nikon wants to get into professional video. I think that's no secret. The purchase of Red really helps with that, and I think having a dedicated video lens. Like that will be really important to Nikon's video strategy going forward.
As a videographer yourself, and you've just shot 2 music videos back to back last week, what video features are you looking forward the most to, really?
I mean, to be honest, the Z9 already was all the camera that I could ever ask Nikon to produce.
What do you film on? What's your kit?
So I've got a Z9, a Z6 Mark III, and a Red Komodo. Those are the 3 kind of go-to cameras that I've got.
Keeping it in-house, really?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been shooting with Nikons and Reds for a long time, even before the acquisition. So very, very happy that came about right after I bought the camera.
Is there obviously, they bought Red last year, so is there communication happening? Is something cooking, really?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's already started. I mean, the interesting thing, right, is from day one, the acquisition was made, and then what they did is they actually flew out loads of engineers from Tokyo to California. And from day one that they were in the Red office, they started talking and communicating and getting very excited about working together in the future. And that happened from day one. And we've already seen a result of that from the Red lots that we released. So that's essentially taking Red's expertise in color science and video over to the Nikon platform. That was something that was developed by Red.
All right, so here we go, a commercial break, because someone would like to see a Z50 Mark II. So we have to say goodbye to the Z50 Mark II. So have a look at it. I'm going to pass it on. And we're going to discuss other things, but there's people in the shop who would like to try this new camera before purchasing it. So you can still make it to the shop if you're in London. We open, till 5, so we close out 5:30, but at 5 we're going to wrap up. But So obviously there's communication happening. Is Nikon running the Red as a separate company now?
Yes. So Red will still be its own independent company, free to make their own decisions. But obviously there will be some oversight from Nikon, as is part of the Nikon group. But essentially they are their own independent company. But there is going to be, and already has been, technology sharing between the two companies. Of course, it only makes sense for us to share technology with them, for them to share technology with us. So it can only be beneficial for both companies.
All right, so Champagne Sumo has a very important question. Should I get a Noct or a Planar?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. I mean, have you been hitting the gym lately? If so, get the Noct. If not, get the Planar.
Or get an assistant. I'm available. You can probably get like 3 Planars for the price of this.
Yeah. But I mean, it depends on what you want to do. I mean, the Noct and the Planar, they fundamentally will give you different looks and different things. I mean, I'll give you an example of how I would approach the two lenses. Is if I'm doing full body portraits, I'd probably take the Noct over the Planar. I think it's a beautiful look that you get, very unique. The only Nikon lens that will offer you that specific look, that level of separation on a full body portrait. Even though the Noct was originally marketed a lot for astro, I would personally use it more for portraits. And then the Planar is an amazing kind of closer headshot type lens, especially if you've got lights on the background, so you can get the beautiful bokeh. I mean, get both ideally.
That's right.
They do different jobs.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have too many lenses, let's be honest.
Definitely not.
There's a question from J-Rod Photo Art about USB-C port functionality. Will it ever support an external SSD drive for videos or stills?
Possibly. I mean, again, if that's something that people want and we get that feedback, then I'm sure we can make that available. One thing I would like to stress, though, is I understand that obviously with having SSDs, the cost of media can go down, but XQD pricing has gone down, CF Express pricing has gone down, and if you have the covers shut on a Z6 Mark III, for example, the camera is fully weather sealed. Whereas if you have another point, you have a cable that comes out of the camera to an SSD drive, the camera is no longer weather sealed. And if you're moving around with the camera or someone trips on the camera, then that can be yanked out, and you've now lost all of that footage. So as a working professional myself, I would avoid using SSD drives for shooting. I have shot on cameras that do have that function. And being completely honest, I probably wouldn't want to do that, even if it was an option. I'd probably want to keep it in the camera. It's a lot safer, both for the footage, but also for the camera as well, if you need the weather sealing to work.
Yeah, I have a feeling that if you start to attach lots of accessories to the camera, including an SSD drive and let's say microphone, and you need a handle, etc. So you need a proper cage. At that point, you probably make more sense to get a box style design video camera, like let's say Komodo, or Pixies, Blackmagic, things, something like this. So where you can gear it out towards this. But yes, I understand why SSD is cheaper now, because you can get 1 terabyte nowadays reasonably inexpensively. But like you told me that basically you like shoot professional features with Komodo, which is fully rigged out camera, but then you're going to get something like Z6 Mark III.
When I want to go small.
And without any bells and whistles attached to it.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the reasons I love Nikon, is you can get raw internally without the need of having any extra cables. I mean, I used to shoot on the Z6 Mark II with the Atomos Ninja 5 and the HDMI attached, so I could get raw to the recorder. And that was a great option because I have the monitor, but at the same time, having to worry about the SSD, so having to worry about the cables was an extra thing that often slowed me down on set. I had a problem. I was shooting a documentary actually, and we were moving around quite a lot. This was in the Netherlands, and I was having a lot of issues with the cable on that shoot. So I ended up with about 30 minutes of inconsistent recording, where you would record for 3 minutes and then you would stop, but then record for 4 minutes then stop, because the HDMI cable I had on set wasn't working as it should. If I had just been recording internally, that would have never been an issue. And again, CF Express prices have come down astronomically compared to what they used to be. So I think it's fairly affordable and not that much more expensive than SSDs. But you do get the benefit of having that safety net, of keeping the weather sealing, and not generally, not having to purchase extra kit.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. I'm looking at the questions here, and people asking about all sorts of things. Is there battery grip for Z50 Mark II? I assume there's none.
No. So the Z50 Mark II is not compatible with battery grips.
I mean, that would make it a little bit chunkier.
I mean, the idea is to keep it small, right?
How did you end up with Nikon, actually? Like, where did you study photography? How did you...
It's interesting. I mean, to be honest, my family always had Nikons. So we've had a lot of cool pictures in the house. Then I was giving my first, weirdly enough, even though I'm very much into video now, my first camera didn't have video, which was the D3000. So I started with that and absolutely fell in love with it. And then I actually started working with Nikon very shortly after that. And then the rest is history.
But you onto more kind of video side of things yourself, yeah?
Yeah. So I went to, even though I started with photography, I just amateur, just shooting for fun. And then essentially when it came time to choose a career and go to university, I chose to do TV production, just because I wanted to work in a team. I wanted to work on kind of bigger productions. And that's kind of where I started with the whole video thing. But right at the very start, I started shooting photography. You know.
Speaking of students, I was pleasantly surprised while talking to Bruno that he told me that the Nikon now runs student discount. That they stopped, so I didn't know about this. But actually, we talked about the importance of getting cameras into young hands, students, and everyone who wants to do photography and have something expensive. Who knows, maybe it's something like Z30 kit under £500 or something like this, But having a student discount is very important. So if you are a student and you're watching this, actually Nikon store, I think you need to be signed up with uni days, as you said. Yeah, but student discount is there now, which is, I think, is absolutely amazing. So it's good to know. It's just a public service announcement on this one. But coming back to the question, so Andy Miller says, the problem with SSDs is how do they obtain the power? Easy to fix in senior rig, but only NVMe M2. Those are small SSD drive styles, could be driven from CF Express B card slots and ribbon opposing to USB. Yeah, it's not that straightforward. Yeah, absolutely agree with you. You can obviously get this little SSD with a tiny
the holder on the side,
which you kind of conject. I was playing with the Blackmagic 6K that I've got, So that's you can set this up. Again, realistically speaking, if you do this, you basically have to kit out the camera and keep it the same way. So
absolutely, and have a cable running out as well.
That's the thing. So run and gun is a lot more difficult. So shooting on something like Z6 III, or like we film in a lot of our videos, which are not that great, I mean, from technical point of view, but ZF does the job, So it records the dynamic range is good enough. It records at 4K. It has autofocus. We can shoot handheld with IBIS on it. We can stick it on a tripod and it does the job. So I think there's definitely different approaches. And because Nikon has Red, we will continue to see those professional, top of the range, expensive cameras, but also Komodo is not that expensive now.
No, and they've just had a price cut, in fact. Yeah. So I think it's under that. So it's making it really, really affordable to get into the cine camera space. So
yeah, £5 really, for this camera is not that bad at all. If you're talking the kind of cinematography,
it's a global shutter, 16-bit raw camera.
That's right.
So absolutely fantastic.
Do you think Nikon will release their own line of video cameras? So maybe let's say now we have Z8, Z9, but do you think we're going to see like ZV or something like a dedicated videography model?
I think ZV kind of goes to Sony's naming structure. Isn't it?
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to say is when you look at some of the competitions where they've got a dedicated stills model and they've got a dedicated, video model at the lower end. Is with the Z50 Mark II, for example, we've done all of those features from both of those cameras into one. So what I think is really key there is that Nikon kind of already has cinema cameras, if you think about it. We're adding all of those professional features that other manufacturers split into two cameras in one.
But do you think there's going to be something like FX3, let's say?
Possibly. We don't want to discount that. Again, if there is enough demand, then Nikon will look into it. But I think with the acquisition of Red, having that dedicated range of cinema cameras in place, and with Nikon putting all of the professional features into their hybrid cameras, I think for the near future is fairly unlikely. But, never say never.
All right, from difficult questions to the easier ones. Z50 Mark II doesn't have a sensor cleaning.
That's a good question. I believe it does, but I haven't actually seen it myself, so... So
something vibrates, shuts it off,
I believe it would do, but something to double check.
All right. So, ENL 25. So there's discussion about this. So that's a bigger battery. Effectively, it's got a higher capacity. As all the high angler points out, is 1250 mAh capacity over original 1120 mAh capacity. So it will give you extra juice. For cameras like this, I always recommend to get a spare one or two. I mean, with my ZF and Z8 cameras that I use, I have 4 spare batteries, but I basically use probably 1 spare on a shoot, really. So 2 batteries is plenty. But obviously, those cameras, they're smaller batteries. So the advice is to get slightly, spares, really, more than anything else. What do you think about this new thing of the AI features? We have Canon R1 that has AI autofocus. We also have this authentication features built into the cameras. What do you think about those technologies, and will we see them in Nikon cameras in the future?
In a way, we've already got both of them in the cameras now. I mean, the X-Speed 7 cameras, they do have AI in them. So the autofocus algorithms and how they work, specifically the auto subject detection, uses AI for that, and it remembers the person. So for example, if you use 3D tracking in auto subject detection, if there's 5 people in the room and you focus on the first one, it will not jump to the other people in the room, because it will remember that that's the one that you want, and it knows the subject already. So on other competitor cameras, you have to actually select what you want. So you have to choose people or animals or birds manually, whereas on all the X-Speed 7 cameras, you can just point and the camera automatically is aware of what the subject is. So if you point it at a person, it will engage eye tracking. If you point it at a plane, it will know it's a plane. The box gets bigger and automatically adjusts the settings. So that is already AI powered. It's not a term that Nikon marketing typically use, but the cameras already have the technology built in.
You mentioned bird tracking, and one of the things that always come up is why this camera doesn't have this feature, via firmware update. Like, let's say, bird tracking, Z6 Mark III doesn't have bird tracking, Z50 Mark II does, Z9 doesn't have pixel shift, Z8 does. Do you think we'll see the firmware updates in the future? Will it come? And what's the reason for kind of inconsistency of, certain features not available, let's say, on day one for all cameras?
Yeah, I think it's quite an interesting question, actually. I think we were speaking about this earlier. It comes down to the fact that Nikon's philosophy for features has changed, right? So in the past, you would always save your best features for your top-end camera. So, anytime we need to introduce new technology, it would come to a D850 or a D5 or a D6, and you'd get that, and then you'd trickle that down afterwards. But, we live in a much more fast-paced environment, something where we can just do a lot of things via software rather than hardware. So Nikon's philosophy has changed on this. The approach has changed. And the approach now is to just release features when they're ready. So, for example, say if you have, one camera in the works. So you have the technical team working on a camera, and then you have the software team working on software. Whatever camera is ready to go next will get that new feature. We don't have to wait for a new version of a Z9 just to get a new feature. We'll get it in whatever camera is ready at that time. A good example is the new embodied stabilization system went in first on the ZF with the pixel shift mode.
That's right.
We've also had the kind of brightest viewfinder in Nikon's history come out to the Z6 Mark III along with imaging cloud. So there's a lot of things that we don't necessarily have to wait for the next pro camera to have those features. We just introduce them as and whenever the technology is ready. Nikon wants to be very competitive, so there's no point waiting for a new pro camera to come out. We just bring out the features. Unfortunately, that does cause these inconsistencies, and Nikon does try to fix them with firmware. So, for example, auto capture came out in one camera but not on another. That came out in firmware. Same thing with the bird eye tracking. So it's something that Nikon does try to bring to some of the other cameras eventually.
So we're saying they will come by the firmware update. Yes. So they're not gatekeeping certain features or anything like this.
A lot of the time, the cheaper cameras get it, and the more expensive don't. And then the most expensive will get the feature added in via firmware. We've seen this quite a lot with the Z9 and Z8. One has one feature, then another firmware comes and it changes that. So we've definitely seen it in the past. It's not guaranteed that the cameras have, so I don't want there to be an expectation that necessarily every camera will get every feature. That's not the case.
There is a rumor of a Nikon Z9 firmware update version 5.10 spotted at a trade show. That's what I think what people get excited about. So Can you confirm or deny or neither?
No, I mean, when it comes when it comes to new firmware updates and new product announcements, we don't really comment on those as it's not released yet.
Yeah, well, for me personally, I'm waiting Tetris. I want to have Tetris on my firmware update and Snake. So those are personal ones. We're gonna wrap up. It's been a 1 hour. We only agreed to about half an hour with Bruno. So because obviously these people want to try new cameras, so there's someone is downstairs being Bruno, basically. Thank you very much for joining us, Bruno. We really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
People can see your work. Obviously, you work for Nikon, but you're a videographer and photographer yourself. Where people can find out about you?
You can find my Instagram. So the Instagram is just my name, so Bruno Murari. And yeah, perfect.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, all of you, for joining us today. If you have more questions, well, after the fact, put them in the comments below under this video. I'll pass it on to Bruno. I have his number now, so I'll just keep texting him. So, but I will see you next week with another guest. So, as I said, we're going to have all sorts of things happening before the end of the year. So the live streams are going off rails, but hope you enjoy it. Photography challenge, night photography. Please send your images to media@graysalwaysminster.co.uk, hopefully under 10 megabytes. And the best images we're going to showcase in a few weeks' time. And we're going to discuss all this. So the good old times are coming back. So thank you so much. Go take some photographs. Pre-order Z50 Mark II if you want one. And if you have more questions, let me know in the comments below. All the best. Bye-bye.